What makes an RPG? Is it damage numbers? Is it a focus on story and dialogue? Is it the mechanics that allow you to make your characters stronger? Or is it a combination of many elements? One thing's for sure, I am not going to open that can of worms today because I can guarantee that there will be 1,000,001 different opinions on the matter. Instead, this video is going to look at many of the popular mechanics found within the RPG genre and then take a trip back into time to find the mechanic's origin. Which game or RPG did it first? That's what we're going to find out. These are the games that we can give a big shout out to for helping make the genre what it is today. Before we begin, if you liked this video, it would help out my channel to hit that like button and also sub for more RPG content. You can also hit that super thanks if you'd like to support the channel. Alright, let's get into it. First up, we're talking about New Game Plus. This mechanic refers to the ability to start a new playthrough after completing the main game and seeing the credits roll. This new game usually provides the ability to carry over some sort of progress like items or levels or proceed at a higher difficulty. Now, the term New Game Plus was originally coined all the way back in 1995 with Chrono Trigger. Here, you could play through the game multiple times in order to unlock the many different endings. But while Chrono Trigger may have popularized the mechanic, examples can be found in much earlier RPGs such as 1987's Digital Devil story Megami Tensei. Here, the player could begin a new game cycle without access to the Spring of Healing or the Cathedral of Shadows. New Game Plus has almost become a standard in modern JRPGs, greatly adding to the game's replayability. Personally, I'm a credits and done kind of guy. Unless a game absolutely blows my mind or offers something very significant in the New Game Plus, I'm ready to move on to the next game. Next, we have one of my favourite things about RPGs, the mini-games. These refer to small-scale games contained within the main game that have entirely different mechanics. The scope and the scale of JRPG mini-games differ greatly from game to game. Some are a core part of the story and world, like FF10's Blitzball, while others are completely unrelated to the plot, like Xenosaga Episode 1's various mini-games that are only accessible through a menu. The motivations for playing these also differ from game to game. Some provide rewards for the main game progression, some are tied to achievements, and others, they may just be there for a bit of fun. The first JRPG minigame appeared in the very first Final Fantasy game. It is called 15 Puzzle, which is a sliding puzzle game. This is present in just about every version of the game and involves a repetitive pressing of certain buttons once the player receives the ship. The interesting thing here is that programmer Nasir Gabelli actually included the minigame without being asked to. Apparently, he seemed so happy with himself that no one else in the staff could complain. Unfortunately, I feel that the golden age of minigames has been over for many years. Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, 10, Breath of Fire, Suikoden, they all dominated in this area. Now, we just don't get them like we used to. I mean, just look at FF16 and all of its amazing minigames. At least the Like a Dragon series is still there for us. The term multiple endings refers to a game concluding in different ways in response to the choices or actions that the player has made throughout the game. Like New Game Plus, the intention here is to increase the replay value of the game. Sometimes there are clear good, bad, and true endings, while at other times there are modular endings with extra scenes to view, such is the case with Star Ocean's second story. One of the problems with multiple endings, however, is when there is a direct sequel. In these cases, developers will have to choose a particular ending to make canon, like with the Shadow Heart series. Now, I think the most popular early example of multiple endings is with Chrono Trigger and how you could unlock different endings by fighting the final boss at different times. However, the first actual game that had multiple endings stems back to 1983, but what game exactly? It's hard to say. Some say it's the racing game TX1, which features branching points at the end of each stage. Others say it's Ghost Manor, where the ending sequence will change based on whether or not the rescue attempt was successful. But when it comes to JRPGs, the first example of multiple endings can be seen in 1986's Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior, released on the Famicom. There are quite a few endings here depending on various factors, including a certain choice made at the end of the game and the location of the princess at the end of the game. Fast forward to 2024 and it's become quite common for there to be multiple endings. Personally, I'm not usually a fan of this. I hate it when a game has such strict requirements to see the good ending, often requiring the gamer to carefully follow follow a guide. In rare cases, however, multiple endings can define a game, such as how the story unfolds with multiple endings in the Nier series. Next, we have the Superboss. This refers to optional bosses separate from the story who are far more powerful than any other boss in the game. These bosses provide the ultimate challenge, often requiring a complete understanding of the game's mechanics and also a lot of preparation in raising your party's levels and obtaining the best gear. It is always so satisfying to defeat these bad boys. Back in the 90s, the bragging rights were real when defeating the weapons from Final Fantasy VII, something that I cannot wait to see replicated in the new FF7 trilogy. The earliest example of a superboss can be found in Final Fantasy I with the War Mech. Encountering this superboss is a little bit different to what we're used to, as it only appears as a random encounter with a 1 in 64 chance. Fast forward 35 years and now we see them all the time. Good thing too, because I love superbosses in games. Even better is when there are multiple superbosses of varying difficulty levels. Next on the list, we have the side quest, which is one of the biggest staples of the genre. These refer to missions that are entirely optional, often completely unrelated to the main story. Since the dawn of RPG time, they have come in many shapes and forms, from finding a little girl's lost cat to defeating dangerous enemies on a job board. Completing these side quests will also provide a range of different benefits for your journey, including experience points, items or equipment, features, mechanics or playable characters, or perhaps they'll just teach you a little bit more about the world and the characters within. There is no one way for an RPG to present its side quests, but when a game gets it right, I'll do everything I can to complete them all. So, where did RPG side quests start? Take a guess. Like many other mechanics featured in this video, we owe it all to the original Dragon Quest. This was the first time gamers had the option to skip certain objectives. Remember how I mentioned one of the game's endings being dependent on whether you save the princess or not? Well, the quest to save her is entirely optional, and this makes it the first example of an RPG side quest. Being a massive RPG fan, I think it goes without saying that I love a good side quest. But not all side quests are created equally. The gap between the best and the worst is absolutely huge. If I had to name my favourite of all time, it would have to be The Witcher 3. Its quests are just so engaging in terms of the stories they tell and the rewards that they provide. But if we're talking JRPGs, I'll give a massive shout out to Shadow Heart's Covenant. Here, each character has their own line of side quests that often result in them learning new, unique abilities. Believe it or not, that saving games on external memory cards or a console's hard drive wasn't always a thing. Video games have changed a lot over the years, and the same can be said about the ways that we save our progress. Back in the 80s, console games were short, quick experiences that didn't require a save. The lack of non-volatile storage in gaming consoles meant that the games that did need continual progression was saved in the form of passwords. Do you remember writing all those passwords down in a notepad? Those were the days. But as games evolved, so did our saving needs, especially when it came to lengthier story-driven games like RPGs. The first major title that featured proper saves was the original Legend of Zelda. Here, you were able to save your progress on the cartridge itself due to a little long-lasting battery called a button cell. This tricks the game into thinking it is permanently on, allowing you to save it onto the RAM. Of course, once this battery dies, so does your save, so you may want to look into this if you have important saves on your old cartridges. But to go back even further in time, this technology originally surfaced a couple of years prior with the release of the Super Cassette Vision game Pop-In Chips. The idea here was the same, except that it required the gamer to manually insert AA batteries into the game's cartridge. Can you imagine if this was still the case? Get to the final boss in an RPG and oh shit, my batteries ran out! The state of saving your game has continued to evolve over the years, which is crucial to the RPG experience. We've had external memory cards, internal hard drives, cloud saves, crossplay, and of course autosave, which has saved my ass more times than I can count. This next one is the complete jerk of a mechanic. I'm talking breakable weapons. This either involves a weapon breaking after a certain number of hits, or a weapon having a certain percentage of chance to break when used in battle. Once broken, sometimes a weapon is gone for good, while at other times, if developers aren't totally heartless, you'll be able to repair it. So, who can we blame for this one? The culprit is most likely the 1984 action RPG The Tower of Druaga, which features pickaxes that will break if used on the outer walls. Since then, we've seen countless RPGs that feature some form of breakable weapons or weapon durability, including Valkyrie Profile, Dark Cloud, Vagrant Story, and Kudelka. I don't know about you, but I'd be happy if my weapons never broke, ever again. Let's end this list with monster catching or monster taming. This involves fighting and recruiting monsters who will then fight for you as party members. Many games have even taken this concept a step further with breeding or fusing mechanics, allowing for even more possibilities. Now, we've seen this mechanic many times before, with the most popular example being the Pokemon series, but this is not where it started, not even close. The first RPG to use monster recruiting as a core mechanic is Digital Devil Story Megami Tensei. Here, the player is able to persuade enemy demons to join them in exchange for money or items. This game was also the first title in the massive Megami Tensei series, which now spans dozens of games over several different sub-series, including Persona. Other popular monster catching games include the Digimon series, Monster Hunter Stories, and Ni no Kuni. There's something about this subgenre that always seems to hook me. I always go into these games with the intention of catching them all and being the very best like no one ever was, which is something that never really seems to stick, but I still have a lot of fun. And there we have it, the origin of some of the most significant mechanics seen in RPGs. I know we say this a lot, but I think that this list really highlights the importance of Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy in not only popularizing the RPG genre, but also giving birth to many of the mechanics that are still seen today. Were you surprised with any of these origins? Is there another mechanic that I didn't talk about? Let me know in the comments below. This was Hellfire RPGs, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, hit that like button and sub for more RPG content coming soon. See you next time.